So first of all, I promised I'll finish early this evening. Very good, you've been very good, not so many questions. Excellent. Very good. Dear Ajahn, thank you for your talk this morning. Something shifted. Were you constipated or something? You went to the toilet? Excellent. Sorry, I can't change my nature. Something shifted. I reckon I found myself a short time later doing something and realised it wasn't them. It was me wanting or choosing. I'm rather tired of disturbing the music and will make a pleasant effort to choose kindness over anger, compassion over hatred, forgiveness over intolerance, and love over ill will. Yeah, right on. That's the way to go. Very good. So sometimes you give talk, and sometimes I talk a lot. But sometimes that when you're just ready, and sometimes something happens, and that's the point of meditating and teaching. Sometimes it does actually shift, and it's a wonderful thing when it does that. I'm finding it difficult to not watch the breath through bodily sensations. Is it okay to watch the trail of the breath flow from the nose to the abdomen, or how does one let go of this? Yeah, if that's what your nature is, you follow it, then that's fine, but don't try to follow it. When people start doing breath meditation, sometimes they start thinking they have to watch it at the tip of the nose, thinking they have to watch it at the belly, or in this case thinking they have to watch it going up, going down. No, you don't have to do that. But if it happens naturally, that's fine. Because if it happens naturally, you're not doing it, and you're not focusing here. It's just that's where it appears, that's all. You're not focusing on the belly. That's where it appears. You're not focusing on, is it going up, is it going down, how deep is it going? It's just what happens naturally. Because it happens naturally, that is okay. If you do it, you disturb things. And what will happen if you're just aware of the breath in this particular person? You watch it as it going up and going down. That's the natural way you watch the breath. Sooner or later, it gets so slow and so still, your body will disappear by itself. You just need to wait, and everything gets nice and peaceful and happy and nice. And then before you know it, hey, all I can watch is the breath. I can't see my body anymore. Happens naturally. So that's why you don't have to do these things. There's one excellent teaching of the Buddha. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya. And there it says, it's been translated by a few people. Just specially taken out and just said, enlightenment is a natural process. And has all these little causes and effects. Just when you get this thing, you don't have to choose. You don't have to make a will. Oh, now that I've got sort of happiness, a happy breath. May now my breath disappear. It just happens naturally. And even once you have that happy breath, I get these jhanas. It happens naturally. You don't have to aim for it or make effort. And that's also the sutra where it says once you get the jhanas, you don't have to aim or want or put any will. May I see the truth of things. It's obvious. Once you see the truth of things, you don't have to, now I'm going to be enlightened. It happens naturally. It's just a natural cause and effect process. And it's a very wonderful teaching because it shows, it's nothing to do with you. You vanish, disappear, and all these things happen. As I mentioned to you from the Visuddhimagga, that somebody asked the other day, is that a good book to read? It's pretty sort of intellectual and technical, but every now and again you do find some good bits in it, and the good bit in it is that little poem, the path is, but no traveller on it is seen. Nibbana, enlightenment is, but no person who enters it. Person has to vanish. Your ego, your sense of self has to vanish, and then enlightenment is there. And the path of meditation, the path of the Dhamma, that's the path, but no traveller on it is seen. You can't walk the path. In other words, you let it happen. And that's the way of this very deep insights of Buddhism from the very beginning. And you don't do it. It just happens. It happens when you stop doing things. A nice simile, which I haven't given you yet, but which is one of Ajahn Chah's best similes. And this simile I usually teach on every retreat. It's a good time now to teach this simile. And he taught this my first year. That was as a monk. That's 40 years ago now, in his monastery. And he would keep on repeating these similes. This is how Ajahn Chah used to teach. He'd keep on repeating it, and then other similes would come up and the old ones would drop, and he never repeated this ever again. But it was a fantastic simile, which I never understood at the time. I thought it was crazy. But it's what amazing thing, even though I didn't understand it, I didn't think it was really useful, you remember it. And later on, when your mind is getting wiser and you can understand these things, it just came back to me. I remembered his teaching so many years previously, and I thought, wow, that is just such a fantastic simile. And it was a simile of his monastery, he said, was a mango orchard, and all the trees were mango trees, and he said they were planted by the Buddha, and all the trees have lots and lots and lots of ripe, juicy mangoes. So it's a metaphor, because the Wat Pah Pong wasn't a mango orchard, it was a forest. And no mangoes have been planted by the Buddha. That's actually against the rules for a monk to do that, plant stuff. So it was only just a simile. But then he said, the important part of the simile, he said, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen these days, they don't need to climb the tree to get one of those mangoes planted by the Buddha. Nor do they need to shake the tree to get a mango to fall. And worst of all, they should never try and throw a stick up to get a mango. That won't make the mangoes fall. In these special trees planted by the Buddha, the only way, the one and only way to get the mango to fall is to sit perfectly still under the mango tree. Open up your hand and a mango will fall right into it. And that's why I thought it was a crazy simile. It's just, look, you know mango trees, I have them here. If you try that with a real mango tree, you sit underneath it with your hand out. Do you reckon a mango's going to fall? You'd be waiting hours for a mango to fall. And if one does fall, it's more likely to fall on your head than right into your hand. So what on earth did that monk mean by that? And of course, now I understand exactly what he meant. And this was, wow, this was a great simile, because it is so accurate how things work. The enlightenment tree, the tree of wisdom, the tree of jhanas, whatever, meditation, wisdom, if you try and shake the tree to try and get something to happen, try and get a nice deep meditation experience, a jhana or enlightenment, if you try and shake it to make it happen, nothing happens. If you climb up the tree and throw things at it, nothing falls. Sometimes people do that with their meditation, try and force it to happen, but nothing happens. So to get the fruits of the path, so beautiful meditations, deep insights, wonderful sense of freedom, understanding what love and letting go truly are, you have to sit perfectly still. Open up your heart. That's what opening the hand is. Sit perfectly still, open up the heart, and all these incredible insights and liberating freedoms, they just come to you. That's even these great meditations, beautiful lights, jhanas, ecstasies, enlightenment, insights, they all come when you sit perfectly still. And you open up your heart and they fall right in. You go try to make it happen, shaking the tree, and you'll be just frustrated for years. And that's actually a great simile of the great Ajahn Chah. That's how this path works. Your job is to sit perfectly still. Open up your heart, not want anything, stop shaking things, stop climbing up things. And all these things fall right into you. So that's brilliant, beautiful, that's how things happen. Anyway. Another nice one. After 4 days of hard work of doing nothing, finally I got my payday yesterday. This looks exciting. I get lights every time I sit for meditation, but they are unstable. Some lights are shaking and sometimes get dim, sometimes more brighter lights come and spread like pouring. It's hard to keep the mind still as a result of these continuous changes. Could you please advise? Well, you get some lights coming up. That shows that you're letting go of your body. It may not be totally gone yet, but most of it will be gone. And your mind is getting some energy. So, you have been doing nothing, which means energy has been pouring into the mindfulness. So the mind is becoming bright, and therefore you can see these beautiful lights. All you need to do is keep on doing nothing. Carry on. It's been working so far, so don't change what you've been practicing, which is basically doing nothing. And as you relax more and more, as you become more still, then those lights become still. They're only moving because you're moving. When you become still, they become still. So you just have to learn how to become more still. And again, you get the mindfulness, as I often say, the mindfulness is what gives you feedback. You're aware of these lights, you're aware they're moving. But sometimes they'll move less. Why? And you should be able to notice it's because you, the thing which is watching, is more relaxed and more still. And the more that this thing which is watching becomes relaxed and still, the more those lights will become still. And not only they become more still, they become brighter. And that's when you get into the beautiful ecstasy states. So you're getting close, but just carry on doing nothing. Just put a little bit of awareness on the thing which is watching you, and just imagine that being more still. And then the lights will become more still. And the feedback will prove that to you. But that's good enough. You've got beautiful lights. What more do you want? So if you're happy with that, only 2 days to go, I can relax now. I've got lights, that's beautiful. So relax. And then you get everything. Ajahn Brahm, why did the Buddha pass away into parinibbana from the 4th jhana, not from the cessation of feeling and perception? Do all arahats pass away into parinibbana from the 4th jhana? That is a very deep question, and maybe some of you who say you're not even Buddhist and only started meditation, that's a lot of gobbledygook for you, but nevertheless there are some people here who read the suttas, and so I have to address people from all levels of their experience of Buddhism. And it is true that the Buddha passed away into parinibbana from the 4th jhana and not from cessation of feeling and perception. And the thing is, because that cessation of feeling and perception is just too sort of still. That's actually where everything is so still, everything disappears. But because the way it disappears, you've been letting go little by little, what actually happened? Well, here we go. Just see if you can contemplate this and understand this. So when you are still, the thing you're watching becomes still. When the thing which is watching is becoming still, part of your consciousness is not useful anymore and it vanishes. So this, when you get past the 4th jhana into what they call the arupas, this is actually where, because what you're seeing is just hardly anything there, this part of the consciousness just turns off. So what you're actually doing, you're actually very slowly, very gently turning off the last consciousness, which is mind consciousness. Getting in the jhanas, the 5 senses have gone. Now actually the 6th sense is vanishing, little by little by little. And this isn't jokes, it's not some intellectual idea, this is experiential descriptions of what happens. The first of those arupas, they're called immaterial states, is that you ask after what you're aware of, and you're aware of actually consciousness. Not by the mind consciousness, aware of mind, but like having unlimited, I say. Now to understand what this means, consciousness without any boundaries, now don't go thinking about this because you'll get it wrong. People love these ideas. Cosmic consciousness, infinite consciousness. And people love these arupas because that allows their mind to imagine and think they can understand these things. You can't understand these things through your imaginations. But there's a little simile which I can give you to get a little bit of what's happening here. And that is present moment awareness. Because present moment awareness, when you're really in this moment, time doesn't really have much of a meaning. In the present moment, time is both infinite. You feel you have all the time in the world if you're right in the present moment. But then look from another angle, there's no time. It's like time is not measured anymore in the present moment. Because what most people have as a concept and experience of time is a measuring from the present to the future, from the past to the future, or from the past to the present. Those three things. I think you've got what I mean there. It's always a measuring. When you've got no past and no future, you can't measure time anymore. It's not a distance anymore. It's just a moment. Which is one of the reasons why when you really get into the present moment, you can sit for long periods of time. You have no idea of how long you've sat for. It's just like a moment long. And it's, you look at the clock, 2 hours, the clock must be wrong. Come on. And it's right, because time has lost its meaning for you. Time is disappearing. So that present moment experience, which you've probably all had, it's like a state of the disappearance of time. So the first of these arupas, it's the state of the disappearance of consciousness. Consciousness has no real meaning anymore. It's too still. Just like time stopping. Your experience of consciousness is stopping. So I've got... so the first one is space disappearing, then consciousness disappearing. I went one ahead of myself. And when consciousness vanishes, nothing left. But that concept of nothing, still the mind can actually grasp the concept of nothing. And that has this like concepts vanishing. And then there's nothing left anymore. And when nothing disappears, at least you perceive nothing has disappeared. So there's still perception, but then you're not perceiving anything. It becomes this last of the arupas where perception is vanishing. It's going, it's disappearing, the last part of consciousness. So this is actually seeing this mind just basically unraveling, disappearing little by little. And the amazing thing is that as these experiences happen, it's not scary at all, this is just so peaceful. If anyone thinks they understand peace of mind, until you get into these things, these incredible states of peace. One of the experiences of meditation is sometimes you get such a peaceful meditation, wow, this is it, this is peace. And then later on you get a deeper peace. And then you get something even more peaceful. And just the experience of a simple thing like peace is huge. And most people don't even understand even gross sense of peace. It just goes on and on and on, deeper and deeper, incredible states of peacefulness. This is what you're doing with meditation. You're just going into incredible states as things vanish. And this is actually where enlightenment is just obvious. So this is what happens. And why the Buddha passed away from the fourth jhana, because there you're still, but the consciousness is not really vanishing yet, the mind consciousness. So it's from there that you can just decide to be so still that when sort of the opportunity comes, I call it like you're so still that when the bus comes to take you to your next life, you're so still the driver of that bus can't find you, so it leaves without you. You don't get reborn again. So that's actually my explanation of that. I don't know if it makes any sense because I'm talking about stuff which most of you haven't got close to experiencing, but you asked a question, I'll give you my best answer. I find it harder to handle the stream of thoughts the longer I sit. Is this normal? Any advice? Yeah, because sometimes what happens is when you're sitting too long, first of all you can keep the mind pretty peaceful and you can do it, but after a while the mind just goes into its old habits. So it's just like, if you're going to, what's a good example? Sometimes, do yoga or something. The first time you keep the lessons short and you lengthen them sort of little by little as you get into it, or a lesson to play the piano or something, or to do, and that's a better thing, is to say do running. If you want to do some running, you don't go starting running doing a marathon. You start with maybe 1 kilometre and then build it up gradually. The same with meditation, because if you go too long, the mind says, okay, enough, I've had enough, and you can't control the mind will go off on thinking. So if this happens a lot, that after a certain time the thoughts keep on going, then at that time get up and change and do something else, do some walking meditation. So just at that point when you realize the peace, the stillness are going, get up and do something else. And then little by little that length of time will lengthen quite naturally. But you try and force it and you just create too much stress inside of yourself. So I think hopefully you're getting the message that all of these stages of meditation is just, they happen naturally, they just grow. You're growing a bush, you're growing a tree, you're growing a garden, and you can't force it. My first meditation teacher, he was a layman, a Thai man, and he said that his little simile he gave to us, that when he was about 5 or 6 years of age in Bangkok, his father gave him some seeds to plant in the garden. You know, the first time he planted anything. And so being a small kid, he was really excited and he'd water them every day. But after 3 or 4 days, he got impatient. He could see nothing happening. I'm just watering soil, Daddy, nothing's happening. And the father had to explain just basic botany. The little seeds, once they get wet, they split and they put a little shoot, a tiny shoot up. And right now, the father said, that shoot is pushing itself closer and closer to the surface of the soil. Just keep on watering, in a couple of days you'll see the tiny shoots. And his father was right. And after a couple of days he could see tiny little shoots, just coming above the soil. And that made him so excited he watered those plants twice a day. And it didn't harm them because they were growing and growing and growing and growing. When they were about 2 inches high, he said that's when he totally lost his patience. Being a young kid, he decided to stretch them all to make them grow faster. And he killed every one of them. But at least he learnt a lesson. You cannot stretch plants to make them grow bigger. In the same way you can't stretch yourself, your mind, to grow. Whether it's just growing in meditation or just learning new ways of looking at life, getting rid of problems in your life, you can't force it. It has to grow naturally. So just let it grow, and you have to be patient sometimes. You know it's growing. You can feel the change happening. It's never as fast as you want it, because you've been trained in the West. It's never fast enough. But that's as fast as it can go. This afternoon I said I went to a funeral. And I knew this would happen because, I came back from the funeral at 4:30 north of Perth, stuck in a traffic jam. Took a long time to get back. But, in a traffic jam, if you think, oh, I need to get back earlier, it doesn't make you get back earlier. It doesn't matter just how you think, whether you're happy to be in a traffic jam or you're anxious to get in a traffic jam, it moves at the same speed. So all of that anger or all of that whatever is a total waste of time. So I actually enjoyed myself in the traffic jam this afternoon. Just hanging out there, talking to Craig, just relaxing. You can't go fast, you can't go slow. If you go slow, everyone honks at you. There's no place to go going fast. Cars to the left, to the right, in front, everywhere. So traffic jams are so peaceful. I love traffic jams because why not? Because it keeps telling me I'm totally out of control. I can't control life. But eventually you get to the destination, and that is like the traffic jam of your practice, your spiritual path. Sometimes, please, I want to go faster. It's really good stuff, and I want to get rid of this pain and get home quickly. You can't do that. Once you're in a traffic jam, just relax. All of the anger doesn't make it go faster. So relax and just be patient. You get there in the end. Number 2, am I me? And the answer is no. I'm me, you are you. Not at the time of the Buddha, but sometime after the time of the Buddha, maybe 300, 400, 500 years, the monks used to do these debates. So you get famous monks would come along, and it was entertainment for people. So all the villagers and the townspeople would come and see these great debates, like football matches between Manchester United and Liverpool. But this would be Ajahn Brahm and Dalai Lama or something. This evening, one night only. And people love this sort of stuff because, there's no TVs, not much entertainment. So when they had these debates in these villages, they'd invite famous monks, teachers or whatever, and get them to argue together, and it was really, really good fun. And one of the famous ones, it was Mahanama against, I forget who it was now. But then, this is how the debate went. And it was just so funny. And one of the guys, this is the guy who's going to lose eventually, he said, "Who are you?" And the monk said, "I'm Mahanama." "Who's Mahanama?" "Me." "Who's me?" "You." "Who are you?" "A dog." "Who's a dog?" "You are." "Who's you?" "Me." And it went around like that all the time. And all the villagers could see that he was calling this other monk a dog, and the dog was actually accepting it. And and after 3 rounds of this, the guy finally figured out what was going on, and everyone was laughing at him and said, "Okay, you win." So Mahanama won that one. So sometimes when you ask funny questions like that, be careful, because good monks will usually turn that one against you. So you say, "Am I me?" "No, I'm me." And you say back, "Well, no, who's me?" And I say, "You are." And I say, "Who are you?" And I would say, "You're a dog." And I say, "Who's the dog?" I say, "You are." "Who's you?" "Me." So be careful of intellectual, smart-ass questions. You get second best. My second question only, something time or tomorrow. I too often dwell on resentment towards people who have hurt me in the past. One person in particular sometimes reverberates in my mind. It's a great waste of time and unpleasant. Please advise. Now, first of all, is if that is you, and those people have hurt me as well, they've said wrong things about me, but I refuse to let those people hurt me. Because every time I remember them and what they did, and all the terrible things they said, I realise I'm allowing them to hurt me again. Every time I remember it, they're hurting me. So I decided a long time ago, no, you're not going to be allowed to do that. So I refuse to recall all those terrible things you did. Because every time I do recall it, I'm in pain again. So it means they can only hurt you once. There are some people who deal with business people in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and they complain they were cheated, and sometimes cheated out of everything. And I said, look, every time you remember that, in other words, every time you get angry at it, because you're remembering it, you're allowing them to cheat you again. They're hurting you again. Every time you recall it, and that doesn't make any sense. They call you a dog. Every time you remember it, they are calling you a dog again. So I only allowed them to call me a dog once. They call me a dog, and this is Ajahn Chah's method. I wrote about this in Opening the Door of Your Heart. If they call you a dog, Ajahn Chah told me, look at your bottom. Look at my bottom? Yeah, he said, see if it's got a tail there. If you can't see a tail on your bottom, then you're not a dog. So there's no problem anymore. But it's such a lovely thing to do. They criticize you, they call you a bad thing or whatever. First of all, check it out. Did you make a mistake? If you are a dog, say, yeah, sorry, I made a mistake there, woof. But a lot of time you're not. And if they hurt you, they're bad people, they hurt you. Why are you allowing them, letting them to keep on hurting you? Because that's what's happening. So you let it go. When you get angry, in Buddhism it said you're putting yourself in a hell realm. And in hell realms, this is not just like you see in the pictures or in the descriptions in Dante's Inferno and stuff like that. But the hell of unhappiness and anger, and it's just a really nasty place to live. But there's one lovely saying which I made up. The doors of hell are always open. You can walk out any time you like. All you need to do is to learn how to let go. Say, I don't want that anymore. And it really is that easy. Number one, My job is to let you know it can be done. It can be done. And have at least a bit of faith and trust that I know what I'm talking about. Once you know it can be done, the next stage is pretty easy. Oh, can be done, why not? You just do it. It is that easy, you let it go. But a lot of people think, it can't be done, or it shouldn't be done, I mustn't be doing this. I'm supposed to sort of keep thinking about this. And that's, the conditioning we've had from so many years of the past. You don't have to carry around the pain of the past. You don't have to do it. It reminded me of a story of a man that, the nuns know this guy, but I won't. Actually, why not? I'll let you know. It's John Field. I don't know if he's ever told you this story, that when he was growing up in Sydney, he was playing with his best friend on a pier. And just for about 5 or 6 years of age, I don't know exactly what age around that time, just for a joke he pushed his best friend in the water, as boys do. But his best friend drowned, died. And his best friend lived next door. And so he had to see the family grieve their 5-year-old dead, and he pushed him in. And he felt terrible for that for years, he told me. He didn't do well at school, didn't do well in life, because he felt so guilty that he was responsible. He saw the family next door suffering. And even though they forgave him, they said, look, you're only 5-year-old, you didn't mean to do that, it was just a terrible, terrible tragedy and accident. But please, you don't have to blame yourself. But the parents said that, but it didn't matter. He was blaming himself until the way he told it to me once, he said, he just woke up one morning, literally, this is how he said it, and he felt, I don't need to feel guilty anymore. And it was as quick as that, and he just let it go. And then he went off with his life. And I thought that was just an amazing anecdote. You just realise, I don't have to feel angry anymore. That person, whatever they've done, they're going to get their karma for what they did, but I don't need to be angry. I don't need to let them keep on hurting me. Stories like that mean that you can let go. You can forgive. And there's other inspiring stories. One of, again, the most inspiring stories about this was the Truth and Reconciliation Council in South Africa. I don't know if you ever read some of the reports, so they're well worth reading. Because this was such one time when, I think it was Desmond Tutu and Mandela, they got the Nobel Peace Prize for this, and for once they really deserved it. It's brilliant. Because they decided after the years of apartheid in South Africa, there were so many really bad things done. I mean, really vicious criminal acts. Actually beyond criminality, worse than that. But they realized that if we keep dragging it up and punishing it, there will be no end to it. And especially through punishments, as I said earlier, you hide the truth. It drives it deeper underground. No one is going to admit what they did if they're going to be executed or they're going to be put in jail for the rest of their life. You're going to lie, you're going to hide, because what's the point? There's nothing in it for you except death or just jail for the rest of your life. So people will lie. So in order to get to what really happened, there had to be no punishments. Amnesty. As long as people told the truth, they'd be forgiven. 100%. Because that was the only way they can get people to confess to what they really did. And anybody who volunteered to confess, they'll be forgiven because they want to find out what really occurred. And one of the stories which I read, which was really emotional, and even telling it to you now, I get emotional because this was powerful. It really meant a lot to me when I read this. And hopefully it means a lot to you also. It was one of the white South African police officers. He was confessing many extrajudicial murders and tortures he committed, but in particular this one African National Congress radical, ANC, it's African man, who had taken away in the middle of the night and tortured and then killed. I remember saying one of the things they did, which meant this will make you squirm. they used to take out, please excuse the language, but I've got to say this, they used to take out his penis and just nail it to the desk, just to show they were serious, and then they started interrogating him. Now for men that's just, just the thought of that just makes you squirm. And they said this is how they start. And he was describing all of this in front of the man's widow. Her husband had disappeared in the middle of the night. She had no idea what happened to him. He just vanished. And now she was hearing for the first time in detail what had happened from this white South African police officer. And it was not an easy thing for this South African police officer to tell. He was shaking and sobbing, as you do when you confess some of the stuff you did. But for him it was a catharsis, obviously get it out there. And he had to say this. And there's going to be no punishment, but his own punishment was enough. And when he finished the testimony and how he eventually killed and murdered this activist, the wife was listening, and she jumped over the barriers which were supposed to protect the witness. She was fast, evaded the police officers, and went right for this guy. And everybody thought that this was it. They tried to protect these people, but this woman was too fast and got right up to this white policeman. And the white policeman thought he was going to be killed, and basically thought he deserved it, because he just described how he had killed and tortured this one man this woman had chosen in life, the father of her kids, her husband. But in front of everybody, with this white police officer just being totally passive, not daring to defend himself against whatever she was going to give him, she just put her big black arms around him, gave him this enormous hug, and said, "I forgive you." And that was just powerful. She had just heard a minute before how her husband had been extrajudicially murdered, tortured, just for standing up for equality of opportunity in South Africa, no matter what race you were. And she just said, "I forgive you." Apparently everybody burst out crying in the courtroom, simply because if you can forgive the person who tortured and killed your husband, there's nothing you can't forgive. And nothing you can't let go of. It was just extreme and so beautiful. And that gives hope in this world. So that was a beautiful thing. I say that to you because that's how much you can let go. If somebody hurts you, they bang the door in your cottage and you can't forgive them. Come on. So that's a brilliant story there of just how to let go. Number one, realise it can be done. That's number first step. It can be done. Number two, it's okay to do it. There's great benefits to it, and there's lots of pain if you don't do it. And then you just, one day, whenever it is, you can't force it. One day you'll wake up in the morning as John Field did and just say, "I don't need to feel angry anymore. Don't need to feel guilty." And then you're free of the prison at that time. Why are some living Buddhas so serious, never smiling, laughing, while others are cheerful and happy? What's going on there? It's what it really is. It's some people's characters. Some people, what was it? They say there was, in the time of the Buddha, there was some enlightened beings who were quite proud because they had so many lifetimes before living in high families. It was just their character. But they were still enlightened. There was others, like Sariputta, apparently he jumped over a puddle once. This was basically the wisest disciple after the Buddha. He jumped over a puddle. He said, "You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be more restrained." And they said, "Oh, no, he used to be a monkey not so long ago." He's still got some of the characteristics there. So, some of those underlying characteristics, just the way you express oneself. And so some are very funny people and some are just very serious. But, the majority are cheerful and happy because, if you look, if you still got the the sutta book I gave you, Christoph? If you have a look in there as Dhammacchedya Sutta, it's called Monuments to the Dhamma. And in there, this passage which I often quote of the king Pasenadi, going to visit the Buddha. The capital was just literally walking distance from the monastery where the Buddha spent most of his life. So, after finishing work, when he was a bit upset or stressed out, he would just walk to the monastery. And he walked in there, and you can go and visit these places these days, the ruins are still around. He walked in there and said, there's a Buddha around, and said, yeah, but he's in his hut meditating, but, you're the king. If you're the king, you knock on his door, he's likely to open it. Same as me, if I'm in my cave meditating, and the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, knocks on the door, I'd probably interrupt my meditation and come out. but anyway, he knocked on the door and the Buddha sort of invited the king in. And the first thing the king did was actually just get onto the Buddha's feet and start kissing them. And this was like a character. You get to understand the characters in the time of the Buddha. You become a king not because you're particularly wise or you're elected to the role because of your past exams. You inherit the role. And so this king, he was okay, but he was a bit soft. And he looked at the Buddha like his father, and he was just so loving to the Buddha. And you could see this beautiful relationship had been developed over many years. And so he got his teacher, and he was a king, okay, these are big shots. And he started kissing the Buddha's feet all over. And he said, what are you doing that for? Said the Buddha to the king. You're a king, come on. And he said, look, I love you so much. It's real love. And he said, you've been helpful so much. And every time I have a problem, I can just walk over here and you get incredible advice. And I just enjoy hanging out with you, as you probably would do. The Buddha. And the Buddha said, well, why do you like coming to this monastery? And this is where the king, he said, and this is the point I'd say the story, is that the king said, because whenever I come into this monastery, the monks are always smiling and happy. And that's what the king said. This was the Jetavana monastery. The monks were always smiling and happy there. And the Buddha said, yes, king, that's what you can expect when the monks are meditating and getting insight. And I love that saying. That's what you can expect. That's what happens. When you start getting insights and you start getting peace, you're smiley. That's the nature of things. Ajahn Chah was always happy and smiling, except when he had the photographs taken, because when I was young, you weren't allowed to smile. You're supposed to, it was the fashion. But during my lifetime as a monk, the fashion changed. And in Thailand, you were allowed to smile. Now, you know how I teach. I tell jokes, funny story. I smile and laugh a lot, stupid starters. The first time I went to Hong Kong, I was in a monastery which had all the traditions in it. Theravada, Mahayana and Vajrayana. The Mahayana, the Chinese tradition, there was a nun there, beautiful nun. She's come and visited here a couple of times. And after I left, the last day when I left, she came out to thank me. Thank you for all your teachings. But in particular, thank you for smiling and laughing. Because now I can smile and laugh as well. So this nun, like anybody else, she was very happy, a very good nun, and she wanted a Chinese Hong Kong nun. She wanted to smile, she wanted to laugh. That was her nature, but the culture would not allow it until I came along. If Ajahn Brahm can do it, now I can do it. And she was so relieved that she didn't have to force herself not to smile. So sometimes that is why you see some, as you call them, living Buddhas, not smiling, because they're not allowed to by their culture. But even in those days, when you're not allowed to smile and laugh in public, when all the public had gone, when you guys had vanished, the monks they're like little kids, playing around, laughing, teasing each other. And that was just so nice to see. In front of you, they'd be very fierce. Sit up straight. And when they're gone, they're just joking like, hey, you got fat legs. Or whatever. That's what they were like, just... And so at the time of the Buddha they were just natural, because they didn't have this culture thing to stop them. So that's actually the reason why some are serious, never smiling, is because sometimes culture says that's what it's supposed to be. So, but inside are always happy in many places. Could you kindly tell the story of the two best friends, one reincarnated in heaven and the other in a pile of gomayang, to inspire us to crawl out of the gomayang occasionally when we get back to lay life? That's one of the stories over in my book, Opening the Door of Your Heart. It's the last story. I left that to the very last, the 108th story in Opening the Door of Your Heart. But that story was taken up by the Indonesian editors of my book, and actually that became the lead story, and it became the title, of the whole series of books, because the word for a worm, sort of in Bahasa, is cha-ching. And this was a cha-ching books, 1, 2 and 3, which you see in Gramedia, they were bestsellers over there. So much so that I'm not sure if they're still there, but the last time I went into the bookshop there was a cardboard cutout statue of me there. And it, because I had my own section, Ajahn Brahm section in the bookshop. And one of our members, when they first went there, they saw it, like in bookshops. Gramedia is like the Barnes and Noble or whatever it is, the bookshop, in Indonesia for Muslims, Buddhists, everybody. And they had, the list of the bestsellers, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bestsellers. And somebody visited, took the picture. Mine was number 1. Harry Potter was number 2. I beat Harry Potter. And so they have the whole section there of my books. And they got this cardboard cutout. And a few people, it's so realistic, a few people have been stunned. They walked into the bookshop, Ajahn Brahm's here! I thought he was in Perth! It's that realistic, so you go and have a look at it. You've seen pictures of it in some of the books which I've published, but actually that's the Cha-Ching series. And whenever I meet an Indonesian on the aircraft or something, you are Guru Cha-Ching. That's my name. Because Guru means the teacher of the worm's teacher. Because that's, just the sobriquet. So it's really nice, I really like this. But the story is, it's a beautiful story. It's funny, but it's meaningful like anything else. And so that is about these two monks, and they were best friends. And after they died, they got reincarnated, and one got reborn in this beautiful heaven realm. Wonderful time. Being a good monk, deserved a bit of a holiday in the heaven realm. But the other one, they don't say exactly what he did, but it must have been something bad, because he got reborn as a worm in a pile of cow dung. That's really a rotten birth. As a worm in a pile of cow dung, of gomayang. And, like friends. You know what friends are like. You always think about each other. And so the being in the heavenly realm, was thinking, I wonder what's happened to my friend. And because, in this story here, the devas, the angels were living in heaven and got powers. So he went searching for his friend. I wonder where he is. So he searched all through the heaven realms, could find no trace of him. And thought, he must have been reborn in the human realm, because that's a fortunate birth. So he could actually carry on his meditation and getting enlightened before me. And instead of having a holiday, go straight back to work. So he looked around the heaven realm, and he couldn't find his friend there either. He started getting a bit worried. Maybe he's reborn as one of the animals. And he couldn't find him in the animal realm. And then he kept on looking, and he was so shocked and distressed. He found his friend living in a pile of cow shit. Now, if that was your friend in difficulty, someone you really care about, you've had a lot of time with, maybe they've gone to prison for something, you try and help them if possibly you can. Try and get them off the charge or whatever. That's your friend. So the heavenly being went in front of that pile of cow dung and called out to the worm, "Hey worm, remember me? We used to be monks in our past life. I've been reborn in the heaven realm, you've been reborn in this part of shit. Come out and I'll take you to heaven with me. And this little worm poked his head out and said, before you take me out to this heaven realm, whatever that is, I just want to ask you one question. And the angel said, yeah, sure. What is it? Up in heaven, is there any shit? And the heaven, of course it's not. This is heaven. It's pure, it's beautiful, it's clean. Well, if there's no dung up there, I'm not going. Because dung is my food. It's delicious. It's fragrant and it's really warm. I live in this. I don't want to go anywhere else. My part of dung is my home, my food supply. Oh, this is heaven for me. So if there's no heaven up in your place, no, I'm not going. Because how can you convince a worm who's happy in this part of shit to go somewhere else? So there's only one way to do that. This is the bonds of friendship are so great that the heavenly being, a really refined being, I mean, human beings would hardly want to put their fingers in cow dung, let alone these very refined heavenly beings, but it doesn't matter. He was going to help his friend. So he put his hand, this very refined heavenly hand, into the cow dung and pulled the worm out, thinking, I'm just going to take him up to heaven, just let him see it. And then he realized. But the worm was all slimy with the dung, and moreover he didn't want to go. So he wriggled and squirmed like worms do, and soon escaped, and he went right deeper into the pile of dung. But the friend was not going to give up yet, so he kept on putting his hand, he's searching around, found a worm, took him out, and he wriggled and screamed, and he went back in again. And in the book I said, 108 times that heavenly being tried to get the worm out of his pile of shit, and in the end he couldn't do it, had to give up and go back to heaven alone. And in my book I said, 108 times I've been trying to get you lot out of your shit, and every time I get you a little way, you squirm back in again. No, I don't want to go, I love my shit, it's warm, it's my food. It's a bit cheeky, I do apologise, but I have fun saying that. And it's so true. Sometimes, through the talks, through the meditation, you get a little bit out of all your suffering, a little bit out of, your worries on past and future, and I get you so out, and then you squirm back in again. Why is that? Because that's your home. And even though it's shit, you've got used to it. It's fragrant for you. That's why it's so hard getting people out of this shit. Sometimes we ordain people. I'm doing them for 3 or 4 years, and what happens? As soon as they get the chance, they squirm out again and become lay people again. They go back. Crazy. Anyway, that's the story of the Chachi, the worm. Dear your awesome emptiness. That's not bad. Actually, you might even say to call me your humbleness, because I am going to compete this year for the most humble monk, and hopefully I will get into the Guinness Book of Records of the most humble monk of the year. I always say, if you're humble, flaunt it. What's the point of being humble if no one knows about it? So I'm joking with you. So you can put your awesome humbleness. Could you explain the feelings of attachment such as love? Is it true it is not the person but the enjoyment of the feelings? Metta. I remember giving a talk at Nonamaus not so long ago about that. What is actually love? There is that romantic love, first of all, which is very much, you like the way the other person makes you feel. In their presence you get high. That's the sort of romantic love. But it's real. You feel so happy that with that person, in their presence. And when they're not around, you feel dull. It's basically a chemical reaction. The pheromones and everything else makes you high. It's just evolution. But there's something more than that love. Now after a while there's a bonding and a trust, a vulnerability which is sometimes abused, and that's where love goes really crazy and wrong and it hurts. But sometimes it is that beautiful acceptance love. And one part of the high of that is that it gives you affirmation. Someone thinks that you are a wonderful person, and they keep telling you that. And that's so rare in this world, that you get this wonderful praise, and people just say just how beautiful, strong, how kind and how caring you are. It's because that type of praise is so rare. When we receive that, in this wonderful thing called love, that makes us feel, it's not just chemical, that makes us feel validated. And it's, unfortunately, it'd be wonderful if you can just validate yourself and just be validated by others. So, the whole family and friends, they keep praising you. You are a good person. But sometimes we need a lover to tell us that, and that's why it's just so precious. There's one person in this world who really values us. You should be valuing yourself. But then, even beyond that, instead of valuing yourself, the greatest love is the love which lets go. And that's usually the love we have to our kids. Not always, but sometimes. When, you'd love your kid to be around all the time. But your kid has to go and get married, and when they get married, they go and maybe live in another city, maybe in another country. That hurts, because you love seeing your kid around. But nevertheless, you let your kid go because your kid's happiness is the most important. And it doesn't matter where that child goes. The mother, just as long as you're happy, just tell me you're happy. And that's all I need. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's the love which lets people go. The love which frees. And you do see that also when somebody dies. And this first time this happened to me, Jenny and Steve. Jenny still comes to Nolamara when she's not sailing in the Lewin. She's on this boat most of her time now. But when she was a young nurse, 20, 30 years ago now, she was married to this young guy, Steve, who got cancer. And he was a white water rafter. Both of them really fit, their own little business, and a business where they went to some of the most beautiful parts of the world, with these others, organising these tours of white water rafting. They were having the time of their lives, together, no kids, loving each other, and their business was their hobby. But unfortunately, he got a cancer, and it got bad, so I was counselling him, and it got to the stage where he was bedridden, he was going to die any day. And I went to visit them. I was in East Fremantle. Went to visit them there, and there was Steve, this really once incredibly fit guy, reduced to skin and bones, the ravages of cancer when you get close to the end. Literally a shadow of his former self, lying in a bed there. And I couldn't figure out why he wasn't going, why he wasn't dying. Until, you saw, some insight. And this is what really insight is. You catch it, you get it, what the problem is. And so I turned around to Jenny and I said, Jenny, have you given Steve permission to die yet? And she looked at me and she got it too, immediately. She never replied to me. Instead, she jumped on the bed and held Steve in her arms. It was one of the beautiful memories I have of the two of them looking at each other, a real love towards one another, and Jenny telling Steve, I give you permission to die. It's okay, you don't have to keep trying for me. I love you, I want to let you go. The next day, Steve died. That was the only reason why he was hanging on. If you love somebody that much, the last thing you want to do is to hurt them. And so, maybe subconsciously, but certainly was there, Steve was hanging on because he didn't want to hurt Jenny. And all he needed was permission. Jenny said, no, please, it's okay, go. And that's happened so many times. I've taught that many times. There's a Barbara over in Malaysia. She was telling me the last time I saw her, she practices that with her clients. She won some award for social work in Malaysia recently. And this works. And that is a great act of love. To let someone go. Give them permission to die. So look, if that is ever happens to you, you've got someone you're really, really close to, your mother, father, husband, even a child, and they're dying. And you know there's no possibility of them recovering. For goodness sake, get close to them and give them permission to die. It means so much to them. It means they can be free. Instead of hanging on, lingering on and suffering just pointlessly. So that's what love is. The love which lets go. And the love which lets you go too. So the love which says, I'm a stupid old man, fat, eat too much, tell rotten jokes, don't keep my promises because it's 3 minutes past 9, there's still a lot of questions to go. But you love yourself. We're all finished about 20 past 9 no matter what. Ajahn Brahm, I noticed many meditators are using plastic water bottles. Now, I know you are a monk and must accept what donors bring you, so perhaps you could send in your newsletter some information about the enormous damage plastic water bottles do to the environment, as well as the millions of animals in the ocean that are killed by such ignorance. Please help us all in informing people to keep our environment clean and help save all the living creatures in the seas. Thank you, and save the whales. Yeah, it's actually true. There's no Thai people here. You know what happened? Please don't follow the Thai people on this. This is about 10 years ago, there was a general, a major general, they're big shots in Thailand. He had a dream that one of his parents or something was in heaven, and in the dream they said, thank you that when you make offerings of food you share the merits, so I've got plenty to eat up in heaven, but you never offer water to the monks. So up in heaven I've got lots of food, but I have nothing to drink. And that was the dream. And because he was a general, he told the newspapers, and that was put in the newspapers, and from that day on, we get given so much water. And I've told the people in Bodhinyana Monastery, we've got this delicious rainwater which we catch, which is sweet and lovely. We don't need the bottled water. But no, they're concerned about Uncle George in heaven getting some water. And sometimes fighting against culture is just so difficult. But you keep on saying, you don't need bottled water, but they have to give it. So we get all this bottled water given. We never buy it. All the bottled water you have here is never bought. It's just, we get given it. And sometimes against our will. And even, I've got to tell you this story too. Was that last year, I received a bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey. And this is how it happened. If you ever go and see alms offerings, they give you food, but also they give you supplies as well. And there's this big bucket of supplies, toothpaste, soap, toilet paper, and stuff like that, which they also make an offering to. And so there's lots of people, especially if it's a Saturday or Sunday, the Anagarikas know this, they're always going up there taking the stuff down. It usually goes and gets given to charity, but I took another bucket and put it down, another box of stuff, and I take it down. And then after it had gone down, after I finished the lunch, one of the Anagarikas in white came up, Ajahn Brahm, in this bucket, at the bottom, hidden where I couldn't see it, there was a small bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey. What should we do with it? Because they tricked me into accepting it, because it was hidden underneath. You couldn't see it. And cigarettes as well. But I knew the reason why. It's because their father had just died, and he liked having whiskey, he liked cigarettes, and they thought the only way you can get those alcoholic cigarettes up to him in heaven was give it to the monk first. Whatever you give it to a monk, that's what he gets up in heaven. And that is not the way it works. And right now, I just told the Thai people this afternoon, because I only just got told this on Wednesday, that there is a fortune teller visiting Perth, a Thai fortune teller. And they're all going around to all the Thai people and said, yeah, your relation is suffering, and the only way to get them out of that, you've got to offer 6 hammers and 5 knives to the monks. Crazy. They said you've got to actually put it in the bowl. And so if you go into the monastery, we've got this huge store of hammers and knives now. And that's where it's coming from. And I told myself, we don't need to do that. If we need a hammer, give us a Bunnings card or something more useful. So there's a superstition makes these things happen. It's so hard. So I totally agree with you. And I've told them, I said, no, we don't need any more water. We've got tanks full of water over there. It's much better. So I don't know what to do. But spread the word around. You don't need to offer bottles of water. The taps is rainwater, which we catch here. And this is really good water. So drink the rainwater. You've got a tap in your room for rainwater. It's good stuff. Anyway, dear Ajahn, I put a similar question in the basket yesterday, but it disappeared. Yes. It went into cessation. It got jhanas and vanished. Please comment on the tendencies that take one to different planes of existence. What are the warning signs? E.g., if you have time. In the story of the Thai king, how does one know it's a deva and not a ghost? Do ghosts know they are ghosts? Do they age? How can you help one if you saw one? Is it a bad thing to be born as a ghost, or how does one avoid it? Okay, different planes of existence. If it's a ghost, number one, they don't have that sort of power to, and they don't really want to do good things. So that king, he wouldn't be born as a ghost, And the other thing is sometimes when you do see heavenly beings, they always come with a beautiful smell. And ghosts, if they come around long enough, come with a bad smell. And they're always messing around instead of actually helping you. So, but these are, I should actually make a distinction here. Because when a person dies, they're in a realm which is close to being a ghost. It's basically an intermediate realm. And those are the people who have the near-death experiences. And those are the people which you can see, which people see most of the time. These are the ghosts of people who just passed away. But if they've been around a long time, those are the real type of ghosts. And there's lots of stories there, and I'm sure that some of you have had those stories before, of ghosts, seeing them, hearing them. One of the funny stories which comes to my mind, there was this Singaporean man, he was a builder, and he brought one of his friends from Kalgoorlie to our monastery to see me, because his friend had got cancer, was dying of cancer, and he said, no, come to the monastery, I'll fly you from Kalgoorlie to Perth so you can meet the monks and give you some counselling. So I only met him once. I gave him some counselling, some advice, some blessings and stuff to give him some motivation. But he died about 3 or 4 weeks later. So this guy in Perth, a Singaporean, told me he had died, and told me that he immediately heard his friend had died, got a plane to Kalgoorlie for the funeral. But at the funeral, the casket, the coffin was closed, so he actually didn't see his friend. The wife had already put his friend in the casket. And a few days later, at his home, I think in Bull Creek somewhere, around that area, in his home in Bull Creek, he woke up in the middle of the night, someone elbowed him, and straight away he thought it was his wife. So he turned around and said, no, leave me alone, wife. And he realised it wasn't his wife, because his wife was fast asleep. And so he turned around and he saw the ghost of his friend. What's his friend's name again now? Forget, but he saw his friend, say it was Steve. And he saw his friend there, Steve. And saw him really clearly. And so he turned around to wake up his wife. Steve's here, a ghost's here. And then when he turned back again, Steve had disappeared. And so, crazy what people do. They both got up and searched the whole house for Steve. Ghosts, they're either there or they're not there. Searching doesn't find them. But then he came to see me, and he said, I saw him last night, absolutely clearly, But it was really strange that he was wearing a suit and a bow tie, a polka dot bow tie. He said, this is an Australian builder. He's never worn a suit in his life, even when he goes out for dinner. It's Kalgoorlie, he just wears thongs and shorts. And he said, I've never seen him like this before. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. This is a good story, possibly. And I told him, I said, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, give a call to his widow, because you're still friends, and just talk usual stuff. Are you all right? Are you getting by? Is there anything I can do? Is there any problems I can help you with? The usual talk. A friend would talk to someone who's just lost their husband, and then just put in there, oh, by the way, what was he wearing in his coffin? And that's what he did. He told me afterwards that his wife said, oh, he was wearing his suit and bow tie. Why did you put that on for? And his wife said, look, I bought that for him as a present years ago and he would never wear it. And I thought, well, at least he's going to wear it in his coffin. And that was a fantastic story, because there's no way that he could have known what the fellow was wearing inside the coffin, because it was closed and he didn't usually wear that. But what he saw, in his house in Perth, was what the fellow was wearing inside the coffin. That's typical of ghost stories, isn't it? You can't imagine it, it's real. So yeah, there are these ghost stories, but this is a person who's just passed away. And if they get attached because there's unfinished business or something, then they'll stick around, sometimes for years, when that's a real ghost. And those are the ghosts who are just, troublemakers. They don't belong here, so be off, get reborn. So that's, the ghost. It's attachment to things, attachment to people. That's usually why people stay as ghosts. And so when we learn how to let go, we don't go to those realms. Have a much better life. Just wanted to say thank you, Ajahn Brahm. Thanks so much for all you do in helping us. It's heartening and immeasurable. Thanks, it means a lot. Is that my writing? No, it isn't my writing, it's somebody else praising me. And I accept that praise. Thank you. I've realized that the simpler one's life, the happy one is. Would you please comment on practical Buddhist wisdom for the average person who doesn't have a coin to become ordained? Thank you. If everyone here became a monk or a nun, who would feed us? Where would we stay? That's a common question. If everyone became a monk, who would feed us? We have cyborgs and robots. So that question is easily answered these days. But it never would happen that everybody would become a monk or everyone would become a nun. But there's still space for more. But the best part of this question is they say, realize the simpler one's life, the happier one is. Exactly. You comment on practical Buddhist wisdom for the average person who doesn't have a calling to become ordained. Simplify your life. You've got things like fashion. People spend a lot of money, fashionable clothes. If I can wear this to a state dinner with Queen Elizabeth, you do not need to get a special suit or a special dress. And if you do get a special dress, you don't wear it except in your coffin. What a waste of money that is. So look, why do you always go shopping? I'm sorry, girls, but it's crazy. I can't understand it. Maybe it's because I'm a man, but basically my monk's wisdom doesn't go that far. I can't figure it out. And I see this because I go travelling, and people from Singapore, they come here on retreat, and they come here for a 9-day retreat, and after the 9-day retreat, they go shopping. I said, haven't you got shops in Singapore? Yeah, we have. And aren't they the same as the shops here? Yeah. But why did you go shopping in Singapore? Well, because we're on holiday, we go shopping. So I can't understand it, basically, that people from Perth go to Singapore to go to shopping. People from Singapore come to Perth to do shopping. There's something I don't get. So it would be much simpler when you didn't go shopping, wouldn't it? Your hair. How much does it cost to get a hairstyle like that? How much does it cost to get this? This is so cheap, so easy, and I never ever have a bad hair day. My hair is never out of place. I've seen this, when sometimes you have a photograph taken. Some people have a photograph taken with me and they do their hair. And just for fun, I say, is my hair all right? To be cheeky on them. This is the cheapest and the best. And again, I mentioned your house. How many rooms can you stay in? And please also understand, I've really made a lot out of this. The bigger your house, the more remote is your family. Now, they're all in different rooms. And many of you, like me, grew up in a small house, sharing a room with my brother. Sometimes people shared a bed with their sisters or brothers, 6 or 7, in a bed even. And you think, no, we have to get a separate room for everybody. You get a separate room and they don't learn how to get on together. They don't learn how to live and love each other. Because I shared a room with my brother all the time, we fought, but there's no way I could escape. So I had to learn to love him. He loved me. And so, we got the best relationship. I was just staying with him recently, just 3 months ago. He's a bank manager, I'm a monk. Almost opposites. But, we sort of care for each other because we had to. We learned how to do that. And so sometimes we have these big houses. Please, if you have children, put them all in the same room. Have a small house so they can learn how to love each other. They'll fight. They'll have a wonderful time. And they'll be inseparable for the rest of their lives. They've grown up with each other. So small houses, they don't look so impressive when you invite your neighbours, but they don't cost that much. And it means you have a family that's warm and it's good fun. You don't have so much cleaning to do. So small houses, please, not the big ones. And imagine just how many resources we'll save, so the planet will not run out of resources so fast, maybe not at all. So those are little things we can do to live life simply and make a difference. And you don't need very much. Quite frankly, you don't need much in life. But we follow the trends. Even just having a small TV. As I said, your mind fits into the TV. It doesn't get any bigger. So small TV is the same as a big TV. The only time you realise just how big the TV is when it's not switched on. When it's on, small TV, big TV are the same. So don't waste money buying these huge TVs. And it's much better. And also, you don't have to have so many devices. Instead of actually emailing your friend, just go and see him. Talk to them. There was a conference in Silicon Valley, all the top IT companies over there, and they gave it the title, Disconnect to Connect. Even the big companies realise that people are disconnected from life and from themselves. It won't be long before they email themselves. That's why we call it an iPhone. An iPhone. I want to change it to an us phone. To connect with people rather than just with the machine. Okay, so it's 9:20. There's a few questions left. They haven't disappeared. They'll be answered tomorrow if the karma is ripe. So, there we go. Maybe they won't be answered at all. Okay, so I've finished now. If your question hasn't been answered yet, just be patient. It's not payday yet. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yes, very good. Okay, have a good night. It's an earlier night tonight, and we'll see what we do tomorrow.